Testing. I just put my lip gloss on. I think I don't want to put the red one tonight because tonight is very casual. Guys, let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. This is another watch party panel. I see a couple of people already in queue. What I'm doing here. So of course the new party podcast is coming back up on tonight, and I have 2 new guests that will be joining the panel the first hour because the debate starts at 9. So I wanted to bring people up to people introduce themselves and we could get into a couple of topics before the actual debate starts. We watch the debate and then we discuss the debate afterwards. But real quick, before I bring up the first person, happy birthday to me. Yes. As you can see in the chat, I pinned my birthday registry, a few of my favorite things, registry link. Click on it, buy me a present because it's my birthday season for the whole month of October. And happy birthday to Julia Andrews. Yes, honey, my fair lady, Sound of Music. Love her. She's what? 80, knocking on 90. I think she's 89. R.I.P. to John Amos. He passed away today at 84. He's known for the father, Mr. Evans in Good Times and Coming to America. And again, I need to start a charity fund for the hurricane victims. So again, my prayers and everything go out to all of the hurricane victims from Florida to Georgia to Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina. Yeah. Slauson girl, I need to reach out to you. Are you available to my podcast? So yeah, guys. So let me bring up the first person because he said he can't stay long. Hi, Addie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Good. Where you from? I like your accent.
I was born at Grady Hospital right here in Atlanta and have lived in Atlanta my whole life.
Okay. I think Georgia, South Carolina, even Tennessee and North Carolina, it's accents, but there's different Southern accents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had lunch this past weekend with a lady from Boonville, Mississippi, and that Southern accent just seems so different to me than even a Georgia accent. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I can't do all the different Southern accents, but I could hear it. I could hear it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I'm not being funny, but you're like my first white person that I had up here in a minute.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
Which
I'm honored.
yeah, and I have a lot of white
Because I've decided since I didn't know this was possible, I've decided starting next year I'm going to become black.
yeah, well, that's a thing now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it is the thing now.
But
Yeah.
you're voting for Harris Walz.
Yes.
Okay. And I wanted to bring another person who was going to be voting Democrat on tonight watch party because Gray, and I'm about to bring him up. He's from the New Party podcast. He's voting for Harris Walz. And everyone in my comment in the live chat, and even some people on the panel, we beat him up every time he comes here. So I didn't want him to feel like we always beating him up. So I wanted another person who is voting for the Harris Walz ticket.
So let me ask you this. Are you saying that y'all beat him up because y'all are Trump supporters?
Yes. Well, I
Wow.
don't personally beat them up because listen, you people should support who they want to support. I just don't see how anyone could vote for the Harris Walz ticket. So
Well, I did not know you were crazy, but I'm still here. Because to me, a black person that would vote for Donald Trump is no different than a black person that would vote for a KKK.
I listen, if
So,
the policies are right, I don't care who you are, what color, but if the policies are right, then that's who I'm going to vote for. And yeah, majority of black people still vote Democrat, but
no, not the
we
majority, about 90% of them. So you got about a
but that's
10%
still the
of black
majority.
people, huh?
That's still the majority,
It's
90%.
still the majority, but the yeah, the big majority.
Mhm. Okay. Well, we're going to get into it. Let me bring up Gray because he's another pro Kamala Harris. Are you muted? Oh,
Yeah, I'm
unmuted.
muted. My bad. Yes.
And well, first of all, Gray, because I did ask you how you're doing because you live in Florida and you were kind of like in the way of the storm.
Right.
So you did say you're good and the family is good and you had your lights come back on recently.
Right. And I actually helped some people that were lost everything. I went and helped, like, did some drywall for some people. That's what I actually did today.
Okay, that's good. So, do you know Eddie? Do y'all know each other, or you just met
I
him the same way I met him?
I messaged Eddie on TikTok. Eddie, I was actually the person talking to you, and then Nora, the producer of the show, is the person who asked you to come tonight. But I saw Eddie's TikTok video where he was talking about Southern white people saying black people's names wrong, and he kind of went viral on TikTok. And I saw that, and that's what made me message him and bring him on here. because he was talking about the phrase and a lot of stuff about the South. So I thought it would be interesting to get, a person's take, because I worked with two Republicans take on like what he thought about, them voting for Trump.
Okay. All right. I want to bring up another person, Avia. Hi.
Hey. Hey, Dana.
How are you? So I don't want it this way. Wait a minute. Give me a second. I got to add another camera slot here. Oh, here you go. So you're a listener, and then you reached out to me. You was like, the next time I have a panel, you wanted to join. Correct?
Yes.
So are you a Harris, or are you voting for Harris or Trump?
Trump. At first I had voted for Biden because it was like kind of like beat into my head to do that, but no, I'm going the right way this time.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, are you Black? What is your nationality?
Yes, I'm Black.
Okay.
Black American.
Yeah. So Eddie, he thinks it's odd that we are voting for Trump.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Actually, I have fell out with a few friends during the first election over that. So the first election for Joe Biden, the second when Trump was running the second term. So, but it is what it is at this point.
All right, so I want to ask Eddie, because Eddie, you are a guest here, and Avia. But I wanted to ask you, have you always been a Democrat, and also why are you voting for Harris WALZ?
Well, first off, I can't lower myself low enough to even consider voting for a habitual blatant liar who mocks and makes fun of all different kinds of people, who's a blatant racist. I have too much moral standing in my soul to consider voting for a man of that character. Yeah, you can talk about policies, and I assume none of y'all can write a check for $10 million, which would be the real policies that the people that would support Trump would vote for. But you can talk about policies and all of that, but the reason I'm voting for Vice President Harris is I could never, ever vote for the lesser of two evils. You hear that said a lot by people. If I take the time to go stand in line and vote, if I don't have some kind of reason that I support that person, I would not vote. So I vote for Vice President Harris and Governor WALZ because I perceive them to be decent people, something that Donald Trump has never had a reputation of being. And I would even go a step further. I have family and friends of mine who are going to vote for Donald Trump. I don't perceive them as being decent people. Liars vote for liars. Trash votes for trash. You are who you vote for. And you can make all the excuses in the world for Donald Trump, but if he's seedy, if you vote for him, you're seedy. So I can't vote like that. The top of my chain list is someone has to be at least what I consider a decent human being.
So what makes Trump not decent and Kamala decent?
Well, just for instance, yesterday in Georgia, Donald Trump, he said that Joe Biden has not called the governor of Georgia. The governor of Georgia has not been able to hear from him, get in touch with him. A few minutes later, Governor Kemp came out and said Joe Biden called him the day before and had a very pleasant conversation, told him to call him if he needs anything. He blatantly lies about everything on a daily basis. And for people to say they love a liar is beyond me. If Kamala Harris ever said, if I shot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and that Eddie Sellers loves me so much, he'd still go out and vote for me, I would never vote for anybody that would say that to me because I'm just not that kind of person.
Well, all politicians lie.
No,
I don't trust. I
Jimmy
don't
Carter
trust
didn't lie. You can't say you're lying when you say that. Tell me where Jimmy
politicians who
Carter
lie.
ever lied. Huh?
Jimmy Carter, the one who's
Jimmy
about to turn
Carter.
100.
Yes. Jimmy
Yeah. Okay.
Carter was in politics for years. Jimmy Carter didn't go around lying.
Well,
Joe Biden doesn't
he
go
only
around
did
lying.
one term of presidency.
Yes. And he was
But
governor for 2
how do
terms.
you know he never lied? How do you know he never lied?
How do you know he did? You're
Because
the
when
one
they
that's
get up
stating he
there,
lied.
okay, so when he gets up on camera, any politician, when they get up on camera and they say they're going to do all these things for your specific community or even for the American people, and then when they get in office, they don't do it, or they hike up prices that they claim that they were going to lower when they do the opposite. So campaigning.
Tell me one lie President Obama said.
Let me see. Just about every damn thing. So where are we going to
You know
start at?
what you are, ma'am? You're a self-hating black woman. That's what you are. And
Really? How?
that's what most Trump supporters are.
Why is it that wait a
Ashamed of
minute,
your ancestors, ashamed of your
but why
forefathers,
is it
ashamed of your
wait 1 second,
background.
Eddie. So why
Uh-huh.
why is it that y'all Democrats, why y'all so hostile and sassy and nasty when someone is voting the opposite? I
Because you're
noticed
sitting
that.
there lying, you're sitting there blatantly lying, saying that all politicians lie. Like you
Yeah,
know
they
all the
do.
thousands of politicians.
So who's your favorite
And you
politician
and
that
the
never
reason
lied?
you say that to honor a liar who lies every
Well,
day.
Kamala Harris is a liar. Want me to tell you what she lied about?
Yes.
She lied about the border.
Oh my God, what a fucking bunch of bullshit.
Oh, don't say the F word on YouTube.
Oh, fuck you and fuck this program. I did not.
Honey, we cannot say the F word. Gray. Eddie, you cannot say the F word on YouTube. We're not on TikTok. We're not on X. You cannot say the F word on YouTube. It's a different algorithm over here. It's different community guidelines. I know. I can read your lips. Calm down.
It
So
just seems like it's a more of an emotional standpoint
I
instead of
told y'all the Democrats, y'all are so sassy.
You can't put me in there. I've never
Y'all
acted like
sassy.
that ever.
Yeah,
I've never acted
she
like
lied
that
about
ever.
fracking. She lied. She lied about doing everything that she's running her campaign on. But most importantly, she lied about being at the border, saying that the border is safe. Is he still cursing? I'm afraid to unmute. Are you still cursing, Eddie?
Maybe.
Stop. Like, don't say the F word.
Well, what word can I say to describe y'all?
Okay, you could say everything else except for F and MF. And then even if you are saying a curse word, you can't say it a lot.
So I can say y'all sons of bitches.
To a certain degree. I'll give you that. You can say it 2 times.
Ma'am, I did not know. Now, I've had experience with crazy black Trump supporters, which only about 9% of y'all are. I had a lady to come into my shop threatening me, why am I voting for Kamala Harris? Because I know you're crazy. I know you crazy.
Okay, so if I do a poll right now, Eddie, they're going to say you're crazy. If I do a poll right now.
Well, that's okay.
And you know the Dixiecrats history, especially in Georgia.
I do know that, and that's what you are now. You're a Dixiecrat.
No. That they never changed. They never left the Democrat to go over Republican.
That's what black
they
Trump supporters are. They've joined with the old Dixiecrats. That's who they.
So let me ask you this: are you voting for Fannie Willis too? Oh, are you in Fulton County? I don't know.
I'm not in Fulton County. Well, I am in Fulton County, but I wouldn't vote for Fannie Willis.
Okay, so who you want to vote for?
I don't know who she's running against.
She's running against a Republican.
Well, I would not vote for her. I'm not saying I don't know enough about her race, but like Trump, her shadiness came out. I can't vote for shady.
Exactly.
So,
and you know what Kamala said? She said, am I going to only do anything specifically for black people? No, she do not support reparations. So why would I, as a black woman, She don't have a black agenda on her platform. At
She
least
shouldn't have a black agenda.
at least
A
Trump had the
president
platinum plan. The
should have
Democrats
an
didn't have
agenda for
nothing.
America.
Oh, okay, but what about them signing legislation for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders? That crime,
Ma'am,
that
are you
hate crime
smoking
bill?
crack? What are you
No,
what
I
are you
think
doing
you
here
are,
tonight?
because
Are
they
you
had
really
they
are you
signed
on the crack pipe
listen,
tonight?
they signed
What in the
legislation
hell is
for
what are you even
every
talking
other
about?
group. Did they not? Did
I
they
don't
not
even know
sign
what you
legislation? Did they not sign an anti-hate crime bill for Asian Americans and Pacific
I do
Islanders?
not know what you're talking about.
Okay,
You're just
you
speaking
don't know.
German to
Now
me.
you don't know, because you're talking about they should not have agendas specifically for a group, but the Biden administration passed legislation and law specifically for Asian Americans.
Listen, I'm going to tell you why these conversations are bullshit. Because nothing I could ever say could persuade anyone like you. Nothing you could ever say could make me think you're not full of shit. And so these conversations are like a Baptist trying to convert a Pentecostal or a Pentecostal
Oh,
trying to convert a
Eddie,
Catholic.
right,
They
but
do
I'm not.
not work.
Wait, slow
They
down.
serve no
I don't need
purpose.
you to. I don't need you to convert me. It's not to see this discussion is not about trying to persuade someone or make somebody
Then what
feel
is this
bad.
discussion about?
It's a panel. It's a discussion, honey. It's a watch
Yeah,
party
but for what's the purpose
about
of it?
politics. We're about to watch the VP debate. You are upset that you are seeing Black people vote for Trump. That is my right.
No,
It's
no.
not my right.
What it does greatly upset me for Black
Do
people
you think I
to vote
care?
for Donald Trump.
Do you think I care if it's upset you or anybody else? Why would I care?
I could care less if you care. Why would I? I don't know
Why are
you.
you cursing? Why is it? And that's why I said,
Because I
why do you have
curse.
Democrat shells? Why do you have
This is not
Democrat
a Bible
senators?
discussion,
Why
is
are
it?
y'all so sassy, nasty, confrontational, contentious? Y'all just mean. But then you want
That's not everybody, Dana. That's not me. That's not me.
We spoke earlier. We're talking about X. We're talking about TikTok. Just look at it. So, and this is not just a white thing. It's Black people too who are Democrats. They get upset when they see a Black person voting
Listen,
Republican.
Trump supporters
honestly,
are some of the most vicious, nasty people
I don't care.
in this country.
It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do
Yes,
with
it
me.
does.
No, it
It
does
has
not.
everything to do with
I
you.
don't live
because
with them.
you support
I'm
Donald
worried
Trump.
about my community.
Your
I worry about
community.
I worry about my community locally. I worry about when it comes to the federal government. What are you going to do to secure the border? What do you want to do to make sure that we are the mightiest country in this world? So if we have to go to war, that we will win, or someone who can negotiate deals to prevent us from going to war, because that is on the agenda that I want to talk about when it comes to this Iran bombing Israel. So it's like, okay, so are we headed for World War III? And if we are, I cannot see Kamala Harris as in the situation room handling business. She doesn't have the experience.
Because you don't like
She
Black
does
people.
not have the experience. She's stupid.
Yeah, that's exactly what you would say if you're a
She
self-hating
is
Black
stupid.
woman.
You tell me the experience, and she's not Black.
Yeah.
She's not Black, sir.
Well, then that's
So
what you would say if you hate minority
Tell
women.
me the executive experience that she have when it comes to war. I'll wait. Tell me her situation room experience.
Yeah, ma'am, you're crazy. I can't do this.
You're crazy. Can you have can you see her having a conversation?
No, I
with
can't
Putin?
see myself talking to trash. That's
or
what I can't see. I'm hanging up.
What's his name? Jinping from China, the Chinese president. Oh, he left.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't bet this person. I don't
know why he got upset.
He was waiting for his
I'm
moment.
not surprised.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Wow. I can't believe it.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Oh, wait, well, let me add another camera slot.
How you doing, Dana?
Here you go. Hey, wait. How am I going to do this? Wait a minute. Give me a second, guys. I have to do this. Why he leave?
What happened?
He was upset that I, as a Black woman, I'm voting for Trump. He's like, y'all crazy. He started saying the F word, and I'm just like, so before I started the show, me and Gray was talking, and I was like, yeah, Democrats, like, they're so nasty and sassy on like X or whatever, but they never want to come on a platform.
Yes, facts.
And so I'm like, but now we have someone who is a Democrat coming on a platform, and he was nasty and sassy and contentious.
I'm sorry. That's fine.
No, I listen. That was very entertaining, honey.
It
helped
was a show tonight.
Yeah,
I gotta go
Can I
back and
interject?
watch it.
I like. Good evening. Can I
Good
interject?
evening.
I
guys.
get it.
I just texted you, cause yeah, that dude was hella and I use that term loosely. He was hella disrespectful to you. All jokes and laughs aside, you come on somebody's platform, they ask you not to swear or use language so you don't get issues with YouTube, and he does that. And what was repulsive was what he stated about how if you calling you a self-hating black woman because you choose to vote differently. Who the hell does he think he is, white boy? Who do you think you
Well,
are?
that is why.
Who do you think you are? No, you're white.
That just
How dare
proves
you
how
come on
racist
a-
the Democratic Party is, though, you guys.
No, but
He
how
said
dare you come on a
SOBs.
platform and talk about questioning your blackness when you're not even black yourself because
Right.
you choose to vote a certain way. I don't ever, when I was on I guess on your show, and the brother Gray, I know he's a Democrat, and y'all beat up on him. I didn't beat up on him when I was on your show. I was very respectful, and he was as long as he was respectful, and he was respectful to me. There's decorum that we have on here, and I told you when I was on, when I was just listening, I had to back out because he was really going to test me if he was on here. I really would have gone at him because you disrespecting you as a black woman was a problem for me from the first part, and disrespecting other black people. How
But
dare
that
you
was
come on?
one. But see, my thing is, Gavin,
How dare you come on? this platform?
I've learned, let people talk, but the more he talked, the more my point was proven when it
Sure,
comes to Democrat voters.
but still, as a black, as I
Did it
didn't
hurt my feelings? No. It's
No,
politics.
but it bothered me because I saw that and how
Right.
you were being treated, and I
Yeah,
didn't like that. And how he was talking about other black people was just nuts. And as far as racism is concerned in Trump, Joe Biden's mentors was James Eastland, John B. Stennis and James Eastland, and Roy Farbus. They were the biggest segregationists in the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
John Stennis, who they
and
named
this
the
is
national
what-
facility vote.
but this is what I'm saying. He was talking about Jimmy Carter. When Jimmy Carter was president, I
today
think
is his
I was
birthday.
just born. But when he said, "Oh, that's not true that all politicians don't
He's a
lie,"
damn lie.
so my thing is, I already knew where the conversation was going. So, and that's why I'm like, how you cannot try to convince someone, or persuade them to be your way. People want to vote who they're going to vote for. You just have the discussion. But he just proved the point that y'all Democrat supporters are sassy and nasty and contentious.
I want to apologize on the behalf of, and as the founder of the new party, for bringing this person. I mean, we have our discussions. I didn't know this person was going to be disrespectful, like I said.
No. That's okay. Did y'all have him on your platform?
No, he went viral.
He was supposed to come on tomorrow night because we're doing a live show at 7, and he was supposed to come on because we have about him
I
and
was
another.
let him come on because he gonna bring in.
I wish Judge was on the show today and he's heard that. Judge would have called him everything.
Well, I text him. He's supposed to come on, but I don't know.
Dana,
Avia.
I'm so sorry. If I would never invite someone that I think would be disrespectful, but I'm glad we filtered it through yours.
Avia, are you still there?
That's a
Yes, I'm
demon
still
that was
here.
on there,
Can you hear me?
Dana. That's a demon.
Wait, one
He's a
second,
demon
Gavin.
crap.
One second, Gavin. Speak up. Turn your volume a little bit, Avia.
Turn it down.
Up. You don't have the YouTube playing in the background, do you?
No.
Okay. I can hear you much better now. Yeah. So you could just jump in anytime you want if you got something to say or whatever. Because this is just a panel watch party discussion. It's light and it's fun. You have fun. We talk about the debate. We talk about topics trending before the actual debate and watch the debate. And after the debate, we'll talk about, what was said or what wasn't said. So I found that very entertaining, honey, with Eddie, but I didn't want him to leave.
But for him to say where you're a SOB, like what? Then you know the trash takes itself out. So
Garbage in, garbage out.
That is true.
He's a punk.
So this is why y'all need to buy me a birthday present, listeners, because you see what I have to deal with.
And he talked all of that stuff behind the camera. Try and say that to some brothers on the street, that you're not black if you don't vote for the way I do.
Yeah, he did.
And you in Atlanta? You in Atlanta?
Right. He said he does not support Fannie Willis. So I was shocked. So it's honestly, I would love, and listen, if there are people voting for Harris Walz, I would love to have you come on to tell us why and just have a discussion. But if you can't control your emotions or you get upset if someone's voting for Trump, then it's like, if you can't be like Gray. Right.
Dana, can I tell you something? We've messaged hundreds of Harris Walz supporters, and only a handful wrote back. They don't want to come on. They're scared to have this discussion, and they don't want to do it respectfully. And I thought that guy would have been respectful because he seems pretty chill in his videos.
Yeah, I don't know what was that about. I think he already had a chip on his shoulder. I don't know.
He had a demon go up his ass.
Yeah, he was waiting for that moment.
I saw people in the chat saying if New Party has people like this, we don't have people like that. We were looking for guests, and this guy got a lot of likes and follows on TikTok off of one video. I didn't know who he was. We invited him here through Dana. And Dana, thank you for everything you've done for the New Party. Like, you've helped us out extremely. I would never bring someone to disrespect you. And me as a Democrat, I do feel like it's too far bringing somebody's race into the fact that they're voting for a Republican. I think that's disrespectful, especially if you're not from the same race as that person.
Well, he's proven what Malcolm X proved about the white liberal being even worse than the white conservative.
Oh, just about to say that.
He's proven what Malcolm said, because Malcolm was saying how they'll smile in your face as a friend, but then stab you in the back. And that's exactly what this guy was. And the fact that he was a punk coward and wouldn't stay on when the men were coming on because you want to attack a black woman because she don't vote the way you want. I know you don't want to be censored. I can't say the bomb, but F him. I'll say it like that. Like Mortimer said about Randolph in Trading Places at the end. Screw him. I don't listen to him. Who I vote for ain't for who you vote for. That's nobody's business. I'm an 80s baby, but I was brought up, especially in the 90s. We didn't have social media, as you know, but we didn't tell everybody our business with voting. That was something secretive. Who you voted for. Nobody was going around bragging and talking about, oh, I voted for this person. I voted that, until really social media started. Nobody would do that. Now everybody tells people who they vote for, and people get upset because you don't vote the way that you do. That's not how life works. If nobody's going to think the same way that you do.
Right.
I'm not going to hate somebody. My parents are voting for Kamala. I'll be honest. My parents are supporting Kamala Harris. They're from that we shall overcome era. And as much as I despise it, you think I'm ever going to disrespect my parents because the way they vote when they want to support Kamala? No. That's their right. Even though they may come at me and say something, they're my parents. I'm going to stand with them. Blood is thicker than water.
And piggybacking what you said, I heard this quote a long time ago. It's like, amongst friends, you never speak about money, religion, and politics. That's why this is a quote I heard a long time ago. So
the judge is in the building.
Judge is in the house.
Judge, did you tell me you saw what happened?
I heard what happened. He's a punk, typical Democrat. His masculinity is usually suspect, especially at his age. So is what it is. Is what it is.
All right, so I'm just trying to set up the stream and everything. All right, so Iran bombs Israel? Are we headed for World War III?
Absolutely. Unfortunately.
We got war in the Ukraine and Israel, and with Iran getting involved, it doesn't look good. I'll just put it that much. I hope it doesn't happen, but
Dr. Julio and that other guy, I did send them the link. They supposed to be coming on. They probably maybe I know Dr. Julio, he'd probably come on after the debate. So yeah, I'm just looking this to make sure to see that I have like the right station and everything for the stream, because I'm streaming straight from CBS because that's where it's supposed to be at. All right, so I have a problem with what's going on in Israel. And this is why I have a problem with Harris and the Biden administration, because they're going to be the ones sending us into World War III. Because now Iran is bombing Israel, rightfully so, because you're just doing too much. They invaded Lebanon, damn near wiped out the Palestinians. And what are we doing? We are funding them annually, billions of dollars, more weapons of mass destruction, more billions of dollars, supporting a lunatic Netanyahu, you know. And that UN thing that was going on last week, that was just BS. That didn't help solve anything. And I cannot see this woman in that position in a situation room trying to handle this crisis. She can't handle the border. So I'll give the floor over to y'all if y'all want to chime in and comment on that.
She can't
Well,
even
what's
handle her own
interesting is,
words.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bea.
I said she can't even hold her own words. So how can she hold that?
Right.
Like,
She doesn't even have that experience.
right. To step in front of a board and just give a directive on anything. She can't do that. Just a jumble word salad. This is what we're going to do. But what we're going to do. And she doesn't
I
seem like
think it's
she's
a
too
big mess.
confident either.
I think it was an opportunity for effective diplomacy. Carter even did that with Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin to set up a treaty situation between Israel and Egypt. I don't think the world is going to go to World War III over Israel and Palestine, because it's simply not worth that to most people who aren't caught up in a religious thing, though the Jewish community of the United States would like, even though they are slightly less than 2% of the American population, to use their economic, industrial, and legal connections to get us to back Israel up. There might be an exchange between Iran and Israel, but I think the rest of the world, just like they did for World War II, they laid off of their horror weapon, which for World War II was gas, as they used frequently in World War I. I don't think anybody's going to go nuclear right now, except perhaps maybe Iran and Israel, and I think they should be left to their own devices. Now, they need an incentive to work this out. I think a two-state situation, frankly, would be a good idea, but Israel doesn't want to go that way. The Russians want to go that way. The Chinese want to go that way. Most of the Middle East wants to go that way. So let's see what happens. Now, this could have been avoided with some astute diplomacy that today is going to be tomorrow, which was why yesterday is today. So that's why we have yesterday instead of today. Miss Word Salad Idiot. So that's supposed to be under the Constitution of the United States of America. The president is the chief diplomatic officer and commander in chief of the military. Well, we want Kamala Harris, like the last little sissy did before he ran off, trying to show bravado instead of fear at having to confront some men. The question would come down to, let us say, you have a football team that's uh, been champion and your quarterback is retiring. Do you just bring in a woman to be a quarterback, or are you bringing in somebody to be quarterback who actually has competence with calling plays, reading the scene, calling audibles, and throwing passes accurately, or do you just go for something because you don't have one in the game? So you want to take yourself from number one team down to the bottom just so you can be DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion wise correct? That doesn't make sense to me.
I think if we're looking at like diplomacy, I know Israel's doing a lot of stuff right now that a lot of people don't agree with, and I think military strategically fighting those two fronts is not smart on their behalf anyway. But they're our ally in the Middle East, so we've been providing with weapons. I don't know if either party would necessarily go to troops on the ground. But as far as Kamala being a person to lead World War III, or if that was to happen, I think she could count on her military generals and military staff and her chief of staff to come up with a military strategic plan, since that isn't her specialty. And Trump is a businessman, so I don't think him as commander in chief or in the well, as a general, some of the things he said about veterans and troops, calling them suckers and losers, I don't think he's necessarily the person that should be leading troops, especially if they're going to World War III.
Well, I would say this to Gray. He's already led troops and sailors as president from 2016 to 2020. And I would say, since he was in that time, to his credit, we did not have any major wars under Donald Trump, is one positive I could say with him. With regards to Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, right now, I'm looking at, of course, though I know we're talking about the Middle East, although there are other issues like the economy. That's a big thing for us. She's vice president of the United States right now. I don't know if her troops, if the currently right now what military enrollment is, but how confident our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, our Marines are in this vice president as of now, especially with the administration and the way things were handled when we left Afghanistan and the way that took place. I certainly think that we are headed. It's not just Iran and Israel, but also issues obviously with China that has been pressing forward. This stuff with the Ukraine and Russia, that the United States is giving money to the Ukraine. Speaking of that, Dana, when we talk about giving monies to specifics, when you mentioned to the punk earlier about doing things specific, what about when they brought the Ukrainian president to Congress to request monies on the congressional floor for Ukraine? The United States, when they gave that, especially when they did that package in that act with the AAPI, they approved billions of dollars to go to Ukraine as well. We have a problem with our economy. We have our dock workers right now that are on strike as of today, which is going to affect everybody. I'm just not, seeing any confidence in this administration if they to lead even this country, let alone lead our troops.
Well, I respectfully disagree with the judge. I think we are close to World War III. I think China is watching. China has its eyes on Taiwan. China wants to see how far the UN and the US takes it now that Israel has boots on the ground. And I disagree with Gray. There's boots on the ground currently in Lebanon and in Gaza. There are boots on the ground. Next is going to be boots on the ground in Iran. And I don't know if that Iron Dome is going to be able to stop all those missiles from Iran. I saw in the chat, people don't think that Iran has nukes. Iran definitely has nukes. Also, going back to the comment that you made about the military, Gavin, I can tell you from inside information, the military are not meeting their numbers. They are not having enrollment. So the young people are disengaged. They don't want to join the military. They're not motivated. So I think we should be concerned that we don't have as strong of a military as we did. And also to answer you, they hate Kamala. They from black, white, Spanish, all the military men I know, not one of them want Kamala as their commander in chief.
I knew that,
I
but I didn't
personally
want to
don't know
say it.
anyone. Huh?
I knew that,
Okay.
but I didn't want to say it.
I mean, I'll
Okay,
say it.
one clarification. I was not talking about the potential conflict that is likely to occur after 2027 with the People's Republic of China. They've indicated that if necessary, they will invade and physically capture Taiwan sometime after that date, which is what they have set as their jump off date. I'm talking about the situation in the Middle East. As far as it goes for the situation that is arising in and around and about the South China Sea, the United States has ammunition for shoot 'em up for 3 to 4 days because they have given away the heavy artillery stuff, missile wise, to Ukraine and Israel. And we, amongst one of the things we depend upon, our current production capacity is 125 missiles per year. That's 2.5 years, so that's approximately 200 and 325 of those missiles. We have 4,000 of them already deployed, and that would be 3 to 4 days worth of shoot 'em up with the People's Republic. The island of Taiwan is about 80 miles off of the Chinese coast, depending upon how you measure it. And a modern attack aircraft can cover that 80 miles in 3 minutes. And we don't have any aircraft sufficient to oppose that anywhere in the area. We do not have enough operational nuclear aircraft carriers, and one of them is deployed supposedly to make up for removing the ground troops in Afghanistan, but that doesn't work. So the other thing is, sir, a Democrat, I would offer that the commander in chief has to be able to function that way, not delegate the authority. You have to look at George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. You have to look at Ulysses Grant. You have to look at even FDR, who had served as Secretary of the Navy. And you look at Theodore Roosevelt, who commanded the Rough Riders in charge of San Juan Hill, even though we now know it was the 10th Cavalry that did most of the work. Those are Buffalo soldiers. You have Truman, who was a captain in the field artillery, got shot at, nicked a couple of times by shell fragments in World War I. You had Eisenhower, who commanded the most troops in human history, approximately 12 million by the end of World War II. You had John F. Kennedy, who got decorated for being a Navy commander when his PT boat got cut in two by a Japanese destroyer. Jimmy Carter was #1 in his class at Annapolis and commanded the nuclear ballistic missile submarine fleet in the Northeast Atlantic and was one of those hunt the Red October folk for real. You got a number of other people who have that experience. George Herbert Walker Bush has the distinction of being the youngest combat pilot in American history during World War II. And what that's about is he got shot down at 19 years old by the Japanese while he was piloting a TBF torpedo bomber, and 2 of his crew got killed. So you've got all of this experience, and you do have this situation as to the disaster with the NAM that came from Lyndon Baines Johnson and his lack of experience, which he admitted when he declined to either seek or accept the nomination of his party for president. And when it comes to Donald Trump, most people don't know this, but he went to a military academy. It was only in high school, but at least he knows how to maneuver troops. Left face, right face, to deal with the opposition, or when you want the troops to go that way and you're facing them, it's the opposite direction. He knows the military thing. And as Counselor pointed out, he's already served adequately and he's a good diplomat. The Constitution says the chief diplomat of the United States of America is the President of the United States. The Commander in Chief is the President of the United States. And you cannot fulfill either of those functions if you have not the knack, the experience, the wisdom, the acumen, the training, and or the education. And she lacks all of that.
Well, what about Obama? Because he doesn't have any military background.
Well, he does have this background. He wasn't exactly all that good, but his background was he was the adopted son of the spy master that managed the assassinations in Southeast Asia, the spy operations, counterintelligence. His stepfather, Lolo Sotoro, was contracted with the CIA to handle espionage in China, North Korea, North Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. That was going on. Remember, the Nam was happening in the 60s. And he did have that familiarity with it. He was ruthless. His stepfather was at one time wanted by The Hague for murdering 500,000 people when he ran the death squads for Indonesia.
But what does that have to do with Obama?
Well, he learned. His dad, his operative dad from before he was 2 years old, who raised him, was into these things, at least into the military circumstances that are attendant upon military matters. So he wasn't a stranger to it.
Okay.
Kamala Harris has zero exposure to this.
Well, I did say that earlier. She does. She has no experience with that. But I want to say hi to D White because he barely comes on now.
Well,
the kids,
there. Glad to have you.
And you. How did you make out with the hurricane, D White?
Yeah, we were actually fine here. The worst part about it was we lost power for a day and a half. But the killer was we lost the internet for 4 days, and being stuck with 2 8-year-olds in the house and a bunch of little girls, it was tough. That was the worst part. So,
wow. My sympathies, brother.
But I definitely apologize for being late. I coach the kids football team. So I got to take care of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a watch party, so it's light, so people could come in and out and stuff like that. So thanks for being here. We got 8 minutes before the debate start. Let me just and thank you people who were sending in super chats. Thank you, Freedom. They're going to run down Vance just like they did Trump with straight out lies. Mark my word, Dana.
I think Vance is a better public speaker than Trump is, to be frank. And I think Vance is going to crucify WALZ. And one thing I would suggest, if you want a fair debate, check everybody to make sure they don't have an IFB. For guys, it looks like a miniature hearing aid. I've had one when I was in Hollywood for 15 years. They can talk to you in your ear quite plainly. It sounds like somebody is standing next to you. And we had that exhibition of what I had been warning about for weeks before the last election, the IFB that Kamala had, which was disguised as her pearl earrings. And on X, a number of people chimed in to say, hey, I bought one. Here's where you have them. And if you go check where they gave you the reference, you can find them. They're $695. One woman posted something saying she was a businesswoman, and she quite frequently wore those during important business meetings where her crew could talk to her without anybody.
We know about all that. Let me get to the next.
The point is, check the parties to make sure nobody has an IFB, and also make sure nobody has a transcription device, which will look like an extra battery pack.
All right. Thank you, Freedom, again. He says it's a no-brainer. Donald J. Trump. Kamala went to the border for a photo op. That's all. Exactly.
Hey, and I have a question.
Wait 1 second.
$42 billion for
let me just read through this.
he failed on.
Let me read through this. Jaron, he says they lied about work wages on the rise. If that is true, why is there a strike at the ports? Great point. Buck Rogers, if Kamala did things just for blacks, he vote for her? Good question. Well, he left before we even get to all that, and I wish he wouldn't have just left. You need to take this man off your show, Dana. He is radically left liberal. Reminds me of Robert De Niro nutcase Trump 2024. Yeah, he fell off the cliff. FTW Neil, because all you do is attack people's character. I don't know who was that for. Maybe that was for him or me. I don't know.
Mark, it's about character, and if you have none, attack the lack.
Ira says Butch Ware just spoke about this on Sabby Sab's show. White Democrats think they own the black vote. That's why he was being condescending. Yeah. And then he was getting more pissed because I'm just like, I really don't care what you say. I'm still voting for Trump. That man made me very mad, Dana, and I'm white and retired. He had no right to come on your venue and talk trash and use the F word. Yeah, that's why I muted him. I did it. Listen, you have to, and this is why when I say that Democrats are nasty, they're nasty on X, they're nasty on TikTok. That's why they never want to come on other people's platforms. The reason he left, he could not compete with your truth about greatest president in my lifetime, and I'm 70 years old. Yeah, he said Jimmy Carter never lied. I wasn't born then, but he had one term. All politicians lie. Atlas Intel, the most accurate pollster, Rasmussen and On Point Politics got Trump up 25+% of the black vote. The Democrats are done. H. Baisley, Gavin, not only our parents are from that we overcome generation, New Orleans is still mostly vote blue no matter who. I was reminded that on my trip down there a few months ago. Shake my damn head. Happy birthday month, Dana. Thank you. Appreciate you. Ira, one more thing. This is the last one. Ira, I am a 24+ year software engineer. The best software developers in the world are in Russia, then China. Ammunition is one thing, but they will shut us down with cyber attack. We don't want that smoke.
Yeah.
And we got 3 more minutes before the debate. Gavin, you wanted to say something real quick?
Catalia said Gavin looks so nice in that suit. Thank you. This I'm wearing blue because not because it's Democrat. It's just this the cleanest thing I had in my closet for court today. And but I had a question. Do y'all think they're gonna ask JD Vance about the cat lady's remark?
Probably. And I hope he shoot back with the tampon.
Well,
A
he's
considerable
gonna
amount.
Hey, yeah,
President Trump has
you guys-
expectations for JD Vance. JD Vance knows, as Robert Costa.
Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
Oh, what Judge was saying something?
I just said I think he's going to get the same answer he's given before, and I like it. So,
Wait a minute. Did you hear
That
this?
decision will be drawn from what he does tonight.
Did y'all hear that?
yeah, yeah.
I can hear that.
Okay.
Yes.
You know what I find strange? Kamala and Tampon Tim, Hyena Harris and Tampon Tim are the same age. She's not somebody 45 years old, as her pictorial representation suggests. When you get the little things that they can do out of the way, she looks like she is what she is, a 60-year-old woman this month. She's not a young spring thing. She's an old hoe, so to speak. Excuse the language, but since I have said this many times and everybody's quoting me these days, I used to represent a lot of pimps and hoes, and I recognize one when I see one. The question is, who's pimping her and who are we getting tricked out for, and for whose benefit is she turning to tricks?
Well, Candace put your picture on her thumbnail for her show today.
Awesome.
And I'm glad she finally did, because you were the one and only person that told everyone Kamala Harris' true lineage and nationality and identity. Now, only thing Candace Owens did, because she has a research team, they dug up some paperwork, basically you're the teacher telling them, and then the student went and did the research and wrote a research paper. Okay, so
Well, yeah, that too. And she did come up with.
And here we see
Wait,
the
wait,
vice
wait,
presidential candidates there. Tim Walz standing a lone man behind his
okay, so they
lectern.
didn't officially
Ed,
start just yet. What was you saying, Judge?
The thing of it is, she is the one that exposed that photograph. Kamala's supposed to be posing with her grandmother, and the grandmother died 4 years before.
Looking for a viral moment.
That was a ghost. What are we doing? Beetlejuice here?
Yeah.
Beetlejuice, and we've got the ghost coming back.
Don't say it 3 times.
I'm not. We got rid of Chicago's Beetlejuice, who's responsible for a lot of these so-called Glocks, which is getting into circulation, when she basically funded the break-in of the several boxcars in the IC rail yard where those things were. But see, nobody wants to let the chickens come home to roost, and the blame lie where it lies.
All right, so let's I'm gonna unmute.
Tonight, with just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become Vice President of the United States, Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance, tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate, who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened. But the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor WALZ, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy wind patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America, because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Senator. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing worse by the climate. Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor WALZ brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected
Well,
status.
Margaret,
Nora?
but
Thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
going to turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys weren't
economy,
going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to have.
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get
No,
to.
we can
Thank you
still
for
hear.
explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor WALZ, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks from Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor WALZ, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think you'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews, is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022, talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Specializing in tomorrow. All right. Everyone can unmute until they come back on. So Vance is winning, and he's a good debater. You guys can hear me? Yeah. So jump in.
I think Vance is ahead. I think Walz. At first, I didn't think he was doing. At first, it seemed like Walz was very nervous.
Can you guys hear me? Oh wait.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I said I felt like Walz, especially early on, was very nervous. Like, although he's done a little bit, and I'm being fair, I think he did was doing a much better job. But the point and the turning point for me was when Vance took over after he fact-checked Nora O'Donnell and the other moderator over some remarks and talked over them, and then talked over even when the mic was cut off, when they said you couldn't hear me, and we all could hear what he was saying. And I think that was really a turning point for this debate at this point. So
yeah, I think it's really crazy how in the first 2 minutes that Tim Walz got, and this guy said Donald Trump's name at least 7 times in the first 2 minutes. It's crazy. I mean, it's a debate between him and Vance, but he wanted to spend his time talking about that. And like the last guy just said, I also love the way that Vance took over from the moderators when they tried to, hush him up and move on to the next thing. I think Vance is winning hands down right now.
I agree with Gavin as far as Walz being nervous in the beginning and kind of getting better as time went on. I do agree. I think J.D. Vance is a better speaker, but I think Walz is making better points. And like what D say, he keeps talking about Trump. I think he's making a better case of why Trump is unfit for office. But I do think J.D. Vance is a much better speaker.
Ma'am?
I think we learned tonight why Trump made a great choice choosing Vance. He's doing a phenomenal job.
I told everybody that Vance is sharp. He will be great when he's groomed for the next president after Trump. We have somebody in good hands. He'll be 8 years older, 4 years older, and he'll be ready to step in. Now, one thing I have to say is, based on my experience presiding over cases, What I saw with the wide eyes, the whole attitude, the tone, and some other things was it involved, I thought of some con men who were trying to desperately talk their way in to probation rather than going to jail. That was just the way it struck me. And other things, he was attacking Trump. Vance was defending Trump, but I don't think he said one thing that was a concrete policy statement that he could attribute to Kamala Harris imhoff. Not one, because essentially she hasn't offered anything. Everything she's done is an attack on the Baba Yaga, the boogeyman Trump. And that's the same thing WALZ has done. I think Vance has brilliantly answered some things in fashions that I have not heard Trump himself respond in that fashion. I haven't heard Biden do that, Harris do that, Clinton do that, either Bill or Hillary. I haven't heard the Bushes. And I haven't heard anybody talk like this with this kind of open candor and knowledge that's right here for him to grab, since Eisenhower would come up during a conference, sit on a table, cross his legs, and start answering all the head.
Do you hear that?
Going on.
We want to turn
Do you
now
hear
to
the debate?
America's gun violence
Yes,
epidemic.
I've got
The
it on
leading
another
cause of
device
death for
where
children
I'm
and teens
a
in
minute
America
ahead of this
is
one.
by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is just your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career, your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was the NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor WALZ, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. It's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens? So you think the individual mandate's a good idea? You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying healthcare once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who's an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortages, we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarship types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the governor
masks.
does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear you. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
where
I
is
can
it
hear
at?
you.
Okay, good. All right, so share your thoughts.
I would say this is the most polite debate I've seen in the past 8 years. And I feel like for some reason that Tim Walz's approach was to agree with a lot of stuff that Vance was saying, maybe to win independents and some never Trumpers. I will say that JD Vance won, but I'll say that I feel like Tim Walz may have gained some independents and Republicans because he agreed with a lot of stuff that JD Vance was saying.
I let Nora go.
So what I want to say is what's interesting to me is he was saying that Kamala negotiated 10 drugs, but what I'm confused on is their position is trying to distance her from the Biden administration and the decisions they made. So how is that possible? It was like so many lies. And the biggest lie to me is the fact that they try to distance Kamala Harris for Biden. But the fact of the matter is a vote for Kamala Harris, WALZ, is a vote for another 4 years of the last 4 years we've endured, which have been terrible.
I like to say right quick, first off, I agreed with JD Vance about the issue, I think, of censorship. The stuff that we're going through here on SchoolTube and what you're seeing on Facebook, that is a threat, I think, to the First Amendment, especially when Tim Walz did mention about misinformation and hate speech shouldn't be allowed. Of course, they got to throw in hate speech, which we all agree. I think anybody saying they hate someone or making racial slurs or epithets is inappropriate, but misinformation is key. Remember, freedom of speech is not about protecting speech you like. It's about protecting the speech that we dislike, and that's there for a reason. The other thing I'm bringing out right quick, and I know Judge is going to probably get to this, can we stop with this AR assault rifle crap? Every weapon is practically an assault weapon. An AR-15 is named for the company Armalite. A gun is a tool. More people are using handguns, and a sister brought that up when they questioned Kamala Harris before, about a month ago, about that. Handguns are actually used more in murder cases and so forth, not AR-15s. This is a scare tactic that they keep using and bringing up over and over again. And these are people who have protection. They don't work with the common man and go into a gun range. So please don't fall for this boogeyman bullshit they keep coming up over and over again. They need to write a new speech. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I find it very comical that at this point in the election cycle that we're still talking about January 6th and 2025, although Trump's already come out several times and denounced 2025, Project 2025 over and over again. And I think it's also funny that they keep trying to distance the border situation, and they're trying to distance himself from everything that Kamala's done when it comes to the economy. And I also find it very funny that he uses all his time to just bash Trump. Instead of talking about what they have actually accomplished in the administration together, he's going to talk about Trump bad, Orange Man bad over and over again. And I think that J.D. Vance did a very good job at this debate. I think this is why Trump picked him, because he is when he was in the military, he was the liaison, for the military. So he got a lot of on-camera training. So I think that the American people are going to see what's actually going on, and they won't be fooled by that foolishness that he's talking about.
My reaction to this whole thing is that we have a debate. We did not have one when we had Harris and Trump. We had a staged setup to help out Harris.
Wait, they back on.
Won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So Governor WALZ, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor WALZ, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor WALZ, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
Roger that.
Okay, cool. So
let me finish what I did not get a chance
yeah.
to say before the closing
I can hear you.
remarks. There was no fact checking on this thing that Walt said about Harris and Biden reducing insulin prices, medicine prices. That's a damn lie. I get insulin and it's gone up. I had Blue Cross Blue Shield when Trump was in office. Some chicanery came around 2023 and I had to switch over to Medicare, and from $1,670 a year for full coverage under Blue Cross Blue Shield, I now pay $14,800 some dollars, not counting the copay for Medicare. They don't tell you about how there is a fluid scale based on how long you wait to get it, what your income was, what your circumstances are. So that's a complete lie. Next thing, he mentioned something, he threw in the people that died and all the people that died and the police that got beaten on January 6th. No police got beaten. One person died. She was an off-duty female cop. She was one of the protesters. She got shot by a trigger-happy Capitol cop. And you had one person drop dead of a heart attack. We didn't get into things from either side where, as a lawyer, counselor, back me up if you can on this, oftentimes when a court renders a decision, that decision might change if the evidence was more substantial, or in the case where these things came forward, there was inadequate evidence. And as we have seen in the last 3.5 years, court after court, report after report, state legislative body after state legislative body is revising their report on the actual facts. And now we do have a great body of evidence that there was election fraud. We didn't want to deal with it in terms of Walz's failure to deal with Hillary, who to this day has not modified her claim that Trump stole the election she was in. So good for the goose is good for the gander. Good for the gander is good for the goose. But for some reason, the Democrats don't seem to want to acknowledge that. So there's a lot in there that I thought was interesting. I found that both of the parties were a lot better at public speaking than their principals.
Right.
I liked what Trump had. He was hitting hard with facts, but he was not very eloquent. He was stating policy. And Kamala was doing the equivalent of I have a dream without saying how that dream is supposed to come to be a reality. But I think in the game that we just saw played, it's interesting that Vance
had some concrete policies. WALZ did not. He was just echoing the empty, vacuous statements of Kamala. And I'm listening to some of the comments here, since I'm about a minute and a half, actually 2 minutes ahead of what you just got through looking at. And they're trying to talk about until the last inning, it was no runs, no hits, nobody on left on base. And then, and I said, well, where in the hell were you? I think I saw the same thing you did, and I certainly didn't have that kind of conclusion. But again, the mainstream media is slanting this, trying to say that WALZ prevailed, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. So I'll pass the mic.
Well, I'll say this. I love when JD Vance fact checked the moderator back and called her out. I when he first appeared on the Republican convention stage, I was like, oh my God. I don't think this was, I had my doubts. And I think it's because looking back, he was just extremely nervous. But the real him, you started seeing right after that, the weeks later. And I appreciate that. I didn't know he was 40. I thought he was a little bit older. So he will be running for president in the next 4 years, whether Trump win or Trump win. And I think he should. I would definitely vote for him, depending on how he does as VP. But so yeah, I'm definitely I gave the win to JD Vance at that first opening statement. But go ahead, I'll pass the mic. And then I want to get to the super chats. Go ahead.
I think WALZ reminds me of Don Rickles.
Yeah, somebody put that in the chat. And
WALZ 58. Yeah, he's 58. Yeah, someone said Don. I saw somebody earlier say Don Fickles.
Well, I want to ask. Wait, I'm real quick. I want to ask Gray. What did you think of Tim WALZ?
I thought Tim WALZ was not as good of a speaker, but I feel like he connected with Republicans tonight. And that the judge is saying, people saying that he prevailed. That's the only thing that I can see that he did that could be a benefit to Kamala Harris. And like Dee was saying earlier, like he kept attacking Trump. So he kind of made his standpoint against Trump and agreed with JD Vance. So I feel like if that was the strategy, then he won. But as far as, as a good debater, I think JD Vance definitely beat him.
I think Tim WALZ was better than Kamala Harris. And listening
I agree.
Listening to them too, I think behind
Me too. I agree with you 100%. It looks like the Democratic Party has the wrong person as presidential candidate. And I think that's their own fault by, one, not having any debates when it came in the first primary sessions so that you could see how decrepit Biden had gotten. And two, by not having anything, as they want to put it, more democratic to select a better candidate for president. They were just going with her. She sort of got shoehorned into the position and nobody had much to say about it. I think WALZ would have been a much better candidate for president than Harris. And I think Vance certainly has proved his worth as a running mate. And I'm so impressed with him, I'd say in a few years, he will be ideal for a restorative candidate for president of the United States.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you, Judge.
Oh, wait, 1 second. Breaking news. 1 second, D. White. Breaking news on X. It says, Justin, CNN admits Tim WALZ bombed the debate. Says JD Vance was the hell? I hate when people be tweeting. Wait, 1 second. Jeez, it was a tweet. Oh, it says Tim WALZ bomb is JD Vance. What is that feedback? Can people mute up? Sure. CNN admits Tim Walz bombed the debate, says JD Vance was the much more experienced debater. There you go. All right, go ahead, D. White.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the judge, but we got to remember that the only reason that Kamala was picked is because they couldn't skip over a woman of color. The Democratic Party had threatened the black woman that had threatened that if Kamala was skipped over, that they burn the house down with everybody in it. So I think that they were stuck and they had to choose her. That's why they went with her, not because she was the best candidate, because they were held hostage. Oh goddamn, my phone just died.
Do you
The
also
fake black woman?
Yeah, a fake black woman. And she what they like to say, woman of color, which is the same as calling somebody colored. But I think also, because I thought of this today, they picked her because she can be easily managed. That's it. Because they nobody likes her, and I think in our party.
Dana, her job essentially is to keep the Democratic agenda flowing. That's what she's doing. That's what Joe Biden apparently was doing. She's given the script by Nancy Pelosi and others to just follow what they're going. And I just want to say, as a closing note, when you were doing that breaking news, you scared me for a little bit because I thought somebody had passed. But,
no, John Amos, that was earlier today. He passed,
right.
But yeah.
Right. But CNN, I'm just curious, what is Van Jones going to cry about tonight?
What happened to D. White?
CNN crying.
Wait. I do have somebody crying, and then I want to get to the super chats. Let me share this. This is what I meant to share earlier. What happened to D. White?
His phone died.
Oh, okay. He probably didn't realize it was dying. Okay, maybe he'll come back in. So it says MSNBC panelist Eddie Glaude nearly starts crying on live, says Kamala Harris needs to win to protect babies and so children don't get bombed. So let me play this clip.
What?
Donald Trump got in 2020. So it took historic numbers to beat him. Right. And so now we get enamored with the Dick Cheneys and the Liz Cheneys and the Flakes and the right. And this man is running around here busting his chops, scaring the hell out of communities. Right. And we're trying to figure out how to keep that middle, locked in on her when she needs to bust him in his mouth. I'm saying it like that because he's dangerous. He's dangerous to particular people. And the history of the country is such that we can't play fast and loose with it. Isn't
it incumbent on all of us to protect the people who are in danger by him?
But you never have. That's the rub. You never have. And so part of what we have to do in the midst of this is to engage in a deep-seated political calculus, right? Even though we know that she has to get the middle, we got to come out and try to figure out how to turn out in large historic numbers, because we got to keep this troglodyte out of office. Because if he comes in, our babies are going to be in danger. Because remember, those young children are going to grow up with the memory of having to not go to school for the threat of bombs. And somebody told them that their moms and dads eat cats and dogs.
Oh, Negro, please.
Okay, take a minute.
For real.
Yes. Well, what about that? I understand what you're saying. It is.
You plantation Negro. You want to sit up there and talk that nonsense. The hell with the damn Haitians when it compares to the majority of the United States of America, black, white, brown, red, yellow. The hell with you. The other thing is you want to support a fascist who is out there saying that the First Amendment needs to be suppressed so we don't have dangerous misinformation, malinformation, et cetera, that can interfere with a unified way forward. Who the hell are you?
He said, let me get myself together.
Slave.
Who is he?
I think that first guy watches that guy, so that's why he was so emotional, because they spread this misinformation and they get these things in these people's minds, so they all suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I'm convinced that's what it is.
He's Cornell West.
We're against Trump. Well, what the hell do you stand for? Matter of fact, the devil with being against Trump, I kind of like the guy. I like his style. And he talks plainly to ordinary people who can understand it. Maybe he undertalks. And by the way, one other thing came up with the real estate thing in this debate. I think Vance missed the moment. What the devil does Trump do to make his billions? He's into real estate. He gave a very erudite discussion of Bitcoin and real estate on X Space a few weeks ago. Very erudite one. He really knows what's going on when it comes around to being able to deal with expanding the housing market. This clown, Kamala Harris, didn't even pay any damn attention when she was DA. She was known as lazy. Instead of preparing for a case, she hiked a hemline up every day of the trial until she was wearing a 1967 Micro Mini. She's a slut, a hoe. She slept her way to the damn top. Now there's nobody to sleep with to get over there because it's the top position. So she doesn't know what the hell to do.
Well, that is why she could be easily managed.
Exactly. And this is pushing Nazism. The Ukraine is filled with Nazis. Some of these Ukrainian leaders are nothing but neo-Nazis. The United States is pushing fascism and Nazism, and some want to call it communism. It's the wrong kind of thing. It's a totalitarian state. They didn't even bring this up, and I wish Vance had, but she's talking about on the Fourth Amendment, she's saying, even if you've got legal guns, we're coming in your house to see what you're doing with them. That's without probable cause or anything. The hell with the violation of illegal search and seizure. And in the Second Amendment, Counselor, you mentioned that brilliantly. AR is not assault rifle. It stands for Armalite. And an AR design, AR-10 it started off with, which was a 30 caliber weapon, not a 22 caliber weapon like the 15. It is now 72 years old. What the hell are we doing here?
That guy, Eddie Glaw Jr., he is actually a professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. So
yeah, a lightweight course.
He's Cornell West with a haircut. He's a knockoff.
Let me get to these super chats. Thank you, Rachel. Kamala always brags about being a prosecutor, but always leaves out it was in San Francisco. Yeah. Jaron, thank you. Notice there's no black person that's the moderator now. Well, it doesn't matter because they all have the same mentality, you know. Jay,
are we talking about the fact that one of the moderators was a sorority sister for one of the candidates?
Yeah, for ABC.
Or are we talking about the male moderator was a self-avowed Trump hater?
Right. So, and these two, they were trying to play like they were objective, but she tried to sneak in that fact check, and she got fact checked herself. Jay,
wait a minute. One point about that. He showed leadership. He took charge of that, and he overrode her. That's what you want with the president.
Yeah.
If somebody's trying to pigeonhole you, get the hell out of it and deal with the issue.
All right, Jay, deportation for the nation, ET phone home. This guy, TM, Vance on point 100, but when he start cooking, he get cut short, but the Moz is all right tonight. Yeah, they were all right. They were better than a previous one. Disco Mama, Judge Joe Brown, loved you before, still do. Keep spitting the facts. God bless. Thank you so much. Ira, Harris Walz lied too much. Kamala told two different stories about the Biden call to drop out on all the smoke compared to what she said in CNN interview, just lying to be lying. She told two different stories about the Biden call to drop out on all the smoke because she probably got her lies mixed up. This guy again,
smoking too much.
Yeah, this guy, Tim. The power is back in the state's hands as far as the topic. Scream at your congressman about this, not the president. Yeah, that's when they was talking about abortion. Freedom. Hey, Tim, how about telling Harris and Joe to stop giving billions to Ukraine and take care of America first? This guy to him again. A lot of foreign entities buying these houses and don't even step foot in America. So that's why apparently the squatter rights stuff can be applied. I didn't think of that. Yeah. Freedom. The only insurrection on January 6th was massive fraud. The Capitol Police allowed people to walk in. That's a fact. Timmy Boy. Thank you, Walter Wilborn. Chrissy, never in Newton. Someone unlocked and opened a 400-pound door at the White House. I watched it live from a first Amen ordered a live feed. It was opened by agents, FYI. Freedom. It's a no-brainer, everyone. Trump or we will become a third world country on November the 6th.
Hold on a second. There's a breaking thing. This is about a minute and a half ahead of where you are on your feed. The dock workers have shut damn near everything down, so there's likely to be a shortage on food. Cars being brought in that are on order.
It's going to be a halt again with the supply chain.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's what they're talking about. So
One second, let me just finish this. FTW, yet again, where is the tone down rhetoric? And I wanted to highlight this, Johnny Johnson. Reparations is the biggest issue, and how you sucker punching George Floyd and BLM in Minnesota. You put war machine tanks on George Floyd peoples. And I guess that was for Tim Walz.
Black Lives Matter. That ain't nothing but a lesbian ripoff of the people.
All right, so you guys have the floor. Which I want to, before I guess we close out, and Dr. Julio, he was on the last watch party. He just texted me. He's in the middle of some family issue, so hopefully he gets to hop on. But go ahead, the floor is open. What do y'all want to say?
If I may, Tim Walz brought up a scripture, and something came to mind that I would like to share with everyone. It's 2 Corinthians 10:5. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I think it's funny that Tim Walz and the representative for the Democrats tonight brings up scripture when everything that they stand for, in my opinion, is against God and is demonic. So I was offended when he brought that scripture up tonight, and I don't think he used it appropriately. So I just wanted to say that as my closing.
Who, Tim or JD?
Tim, he brought up a scripture, Matthew 25:40.
Oh, he did?
And he was trying to compare, I guess, like looking out for the little man and doing for the one that has the least. But they're not doing for Americans right now. There's a $3 billion shortage for FEMA, yet we just sent over more money to Ukraine, and God knows how much we're going to send to Israel right now. So I'm just disgusted that he used that scripture tonight when there's Americans right now underwater.
You know what, sister, that's so right on point. I was thinking about that myself. And you know what else I thought about? When you get on an airplane, what does it say? If your oxygen mask drops in front of you, put on your own first before you attempt to help anybody else. You can't do anything for anybody else if you aren't there.
Don Rickles is trending on X tonight.
Oh, you hockey pucks. Oh. I'm a nice guy. That was Don Rickles. For the younger people. He was an insult comic, but Frank Sinatra is who blessed his career. So
I would like to invoke what Tim Walz is doing tonight. Like I said earlier, this is the most polite debate. And when we started the show, we seen someone be extremely disrespectful. So I would like to kind of invoke less division and more peace and say, we have a lot more in common than we have different. I'm a Democrat and I'm on a video right now with all Republicans. So Tim Walz tonight agreed with a lot of stuff Vance said, and I feel like I agree with some things that Republicans say. So they were both polite. They seemed like they shook hands and they were nice guys to each other. So I would like to see more of that into the future in the political arena.
Well, you're a good Democrat, but you are a man and you're acting like a man acts. That last one we had on there that ran off all in a tizzy.
Did you see? Were you watching, Judge, when the guy was on Eddie?
Yeah, kind of, sorta.
That wasn't a guy.
Listen,
I
don't.
think and by the way, one thing, that wide-eyed thing, some of you may be old enough to know what we used to joke about when somebody has that wide-eyed look. Little sugar in the tank.
Well, I don't
dead
stoop to their
giveaway.
level. Yeah, but see, I don't stoop to their level, but that's why I said it when he was here. I said, see, this is why when I say these Democrat voters and Democrat shells, they're nasty, they're sassy, they're contentious, they're rude. You know, it's not just on X. You know, so
I think he's mad. He's not going to be able to go to a Diddy party anymore.
He's a little sassy. That's what the young folk call it.
He was laid back on there like he was waiting on me and Mr. Jones. So
hi, Dr. Austin.
Hey.
Dr. Austin. Hey, Austin, Dr. Julio. And D White is back, honey. He put that charge in his phone. Real quick, though, because you said breaking news with the strike. Yeah, U.S. dock workers strike, halting half the nation's ocean shipping. Halting half the nation's ocean shipping. I hate the way news reporters write headlines now. What is
Yeah,
this?
they don't want to freak out and say shortage is coming soon. We did a story on this week. And everyone, I just want to let everyone know, if you have medicine, if you have toilet paper, if you need toilet paper, you need anything, please stock up now. I would say maybe not in the next week, but I would say by the end of the month, everything's going to go up in price and there's going to be shortages if this continues.
Thank you for saying that, because I am going to go to Costco's, and I'm putting that on my calendar right now. I am going to go to Costco's tomorrow and stock up on water, everything else.
Right. If I could say something, I want to thank you for letting me on the broadcast already. I didn't mean to insult Don Rickles by comparing him with Tim Walz, but it was too easy. Let me say there's something about this union strike that's going on with the longshoremen, and I'm here in New Orleans as well. So that I just saw the ad for the news with that, where they were interviewing the dock workers who are leading this protest. We do need to stock up and be prepared. I do think it was a disappointment, and I will say this, that was not brought up in the debate. I think that would have been something well to talk about, because without our longshoremen, without them getting supplies, we'd be screwed. And it's obviously something that's happened now, but it's a sign of what's going on with this economy and how bad it is. And with inflation going on, we are not in a great state. And I feel November 6th, people need to make a decision. You know, people actually, are frustrated. Black Americans, especially in a lot of these Democratic cities that I've seen, like Chicago and New York, they're frustrated. Our mayors are getting indicted. She hasn't gotten indicted yet, but they mentioned LaToya Cantrell, Mayor LaToya Cantrell, in an indictment of an official, which might be bound to happen. So it seems like all the black mayors and candidates, especially now that Biden is going out, looks like they're getting targeted. But I want to thank you for having me come on, and I enjoyed the broadcast and listening to you all. So thank you. But yeah, it was a great debate tonight. It was great talking with everyone. So
thank you, Gavin. I appreciate you being up here.
While we're on the topic of the longshoremen, I want to say that this whole debate is a little more nuanced than most people think. It isn't actually about money. The longshoremen actually make a substantial amount of money, for the jobs they do. What it's about is about automation. The problem is that the port officers are trying to automate a lot of the jobs away. And I am a Republican. I'm also for capitalism, but at the same time, we got to be fair here. This is a large union with 100,000 plus workers, who do a very important job. Two people in this United States who you can't underappreciate, who don't get the recognition, are longshoremen and truckers. Everything that comes to the United States comes on boat, and everything that comes on boat is delivered by truck. So I mean, it's unfortunate that we, the American people, are actually caught in the middle of this, but this is much bigger than just us, because the longshoremen, they're fighting for their right to feed their family and take care of their family, the job that they've been trained to do and that they've been doing for years, versus a company who wants to make money. And I'm a capitalist, so I'm all about making money, but at the same time, you can't automate the jobs away of hundreds of thousands of people. So I hope that this comes to some kind of agreement sometime soon, because I don't want to be a fear monger here, but this strike goes on for longer than 3 weeks, and we should be very afraid of the consequences. I'm just going to say that.
You know what I'm going to do, Dana? I think we should talk about it later, but I've got a very beautiful female friend, close friend, and her uncle is, let's say, a very highly placed union official in one of the biggest harbor complexes in the United States, a longshoreman. So I'm going to ask her what's going on.
Yeah, I think D White, you hit it, on a nail, but because they do make good money, but it's bigger than that.
My
And
grandfather was a longshoreman.
Yeah.
I want to get Julio, Dr. Julio, because hi. Are you muted? Did I mute you? Wait a minute. No, I can't.
No, can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, no.
Roger that.
How are you, Judge? The one thing that I there's a couple of things that I found interesting in this debate as I was able to watch some of it. The chief thing was that I wanted to comment on was that Tim Walz made the claim that Trump created the largest trade deficit with China. That was the claim that he made. But that part of it wasn't even at all true. There were so many lies that were told on that stage that what this debate in full basically showed me was that this is a decision where you're choosing between legitimate government where Americans are not having to suffer to buy groceries, where they're not having to suffer to gather the basic necessities of life, or you are voting for someone that is an advocate of what is going to eventually become a communist agenda. That was what I was able to pick up. That's what that both of these candidates clearly reflected why they're running with who they're running with. Tim Walz was repeating the same lines that he'd been told, the same as Kamala Harris did when her debate against Trump. That's what I saw in this debate, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, you hear the same things from everybody that's associated with the DNC, whether it's Tim Walz, whether it's Kamala Harris, whether it's Hillary Clinton, whether it's Nancy Pelosi, whether you're talking about Edwards, you hear the same thing, whether you're talking to Fannie Willis, whether you're talking to Letitia James, you hear the exact same thing.
Absolutely, without question. And I think that the fact that, for example, and going back, I did want to bring this up as well. How many times are we going to let Democrats say the same exact speech in the same exact way in several different states and let them get away with it? What they're doing, what I've noticed more and more, to Judge's point, the Democratic Party uses the same cookie cutter system every election cycle. They have the same pandering schedule, the same speech over and over again. And I'm wondering, when will we wake up to it?
Yeah. I think they learned how to do this when they were the party of slavery, and they did studies, they did implementations, and they had most of their members who knew how to handle Negro slaves and how to indoctrinate them. And they're using that stuff now not to grow cotton, but to grow rainbows.
I like that. I'm gonna use that same.
To that point, if you read The Making of a Slave from Willie Lynch, whether you can believe that's an authentic letter or not, if you divide people amongst themselves, you can control them. The Democratic Party is great at dividing people among themselves, except when they have a common enemy. Democrats are notorious for going on stage talking shit about one another during debates. I mean, not saying Republicans don't do the same thing, but it's to a lesser degree. But then isn't it real funny how when Donald Trump shows up, all the Democrats, all of the rainbow soup, all of the alphabet soup community, everybody just unites against Donald Trump. Everyone does it. We have never seen.
It's the party. It's called, quote, the party line, unquote. And by the way, more than 50 years ago, when I was an intern at a DC think tank, I had to study, research the slave pamphlets, as we called them, on microwave in the Library of Congress. It was not a letter Willie Lynch wrote. He wrote a bunch of them, but most famously, he published pamphlets between about it. The earliest I recall reading was about 1706, 1708, up till the 1720s. He was a plantation owner in Bermuda, and he toured the English colonies talking about how to raise slaves effectively. And he'd give these lectures that all of the slave masters would attend to get clues on his insights. So he was real. He did talk about divide and conquer, but most alarmingly, his main thing was that Negroes were like horses. You could not enslave a wild herd stallion. You could only use the stallion to breed. But you could enslave or domesticate the herd mare. So what you did is you picked the likely negress and you put her in charge of the Negroes. You never dealt with a Negro man, no matter how close he was to you, your valet, your driver, your jockey, your gun carrier, or whatever he might be. Always get yourself some comely wenches to be bed wenches when they provided you with information and proved their worth by helping you spy on your neighbors who would come for a visit. When they got gray in their hair, make them mammies and have them run the Negroes. And that's what you see right now with the way they are just dissing and tramping all over black men.
I want to play this clip here. And guys, I put the New Party YouTube channel in the chat. Please go and subscribe, and I'm going to pin it as well. And you could go in my community section and you could tap the link to subscribe. So subscribe to the New Party. I want to play this clip. I just saw this on X.
Should folks stand for the national anthem?
I think that one of the beautiful things about our country is that we were founded on certain principles that we articulated in 1776. We are all and should be treated as equals. We articulated those principles in our Constitution. And part of what we decided is what makes a fair and just and noble society and a democracy, a true democracy, is freedom of religion, freedom, right, of association, freedom to organize, First Amendment. So that is part of who we are as a country. And I will defend it to the core, which is that we give people certain choices in this country.
Should folks stand?
She didn't answer the question.
I know she didn't. And she's also leading the charge to suppress the First Amendment because of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. And along with WALZ, both of them have said that free speech should be restricted, and we need a commission to attack misinformation. Now, who gets to make that choice?
The party that's in power. The party that's in power gets to make that choice, and that is the thing. It's like, and when you ask questions to everyday American, and when I have conversations with people, I really ask them, do you pay attention to the stuff that comes out of these people's mouths? If you have the ability to regulate free speech, I was talking about this with my mother today, Judge. While I may not agree with what one says, I must defend to the death their right to say it in order to really be free. That's part of one of the basic requirements of freedom. If a man can't speak his mind, he can't make his mind turn into reality in any capacity. If a man is not at the minimum free to speak what is actually in his mind and in his heart, whether it's good, bad, or evil, you don't have a genuinely free society. But that's what, the more that I listen to Tim Walz, the more I listen to Kamala Harris, they don't want a free society. What they want is something where freedom is given up in exchange for this sort of pseudo security. That's where we're being pushed nowadays. And that's exactly the agenda that the Democratic Party is pushing.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're taking people's First Amendment rights away. I would say that social media has given people the ability for everybody to have an opinion, and cyberbullying and all this stuff. And with technology, they're trying to find a way to regulate what people are saying to each other because of hate speech or because of crimes and things like that. And I feel like that's why censorship is such a big thing now, because you can get attacked at any time, virtually or digitally, and it's some consequences, real life consequences that happens in real life that's happening online.
But if she said blatantly that we need to regulate social media, who then determines what to be regulated? Who determines? Because that is a limitation on free speech. If I tell you I'm going to limit what users can post on any given site, I'm placing a limitation on their ability to engage in expression.
That's true, but go ahead, Judge. I'm sorry.
Let me say this. If anybody on here gets told that I'm an MF or I'm this, that, and the other, and I get hate spewed at me for trying to speak reality uncensored, it's very few people have to put up with that more than me. But I'm totally against hate speech, because if somebody's throwing it at you, just have a good comeback or be wiser, or, if the shoe fits, if it doesn't, it doesn't. Just be strong. And I'm not a person that advocates that we tone everything down to handle the weakest mind. If somebody wants to take themselves out, let them take themselves out. Bye. Be gone.
I want to get people
family, but we need to keep the republic strong.
Absolutely.
I want to get people's thoughts on the governor yesterday in California making it illegal to ask for ID when voting. So yeah, it's it says what censorship law that California passed.
Sicherheit over Deutschland, ja? Mein Führer, we are succeeding. The first steps have been put in place.
The end is near, comrade.
So what are your guys' thoughts on that? On, it's basically California making it illegal to ask for ID. So if you ask, that means you're breaking the law because it's illegal to ask.
I think that's going to stand up exactly 2 inches in even the Ninth Circuit. That's not going to wash. And what happens, you're going to put somebody in jail for attempting to deal with the law, enforce the law. And you can ask for ID to get on a plane. You can ask for ID to buy tobacco. You can ask for ID to buy liquor or alcohol. You can ask for ID to get in a show, to get on an airplane. You can ask for ID to drive someplace, but you can't ask for ID for the most fundamentally important situation out there, which is casting a vote. You can't ask for that. That's absolutely preposterous. And the other thing that makes me just tickled, counselor, see what you think about it. When there is a situation and a challenge, and also especially under the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877, which was next up on the agenda January 6th. Now, what happens is the House, which at this point is dominated by the Republican Party, decides to, if California comes in with an electoral college count carried out without the ability to ask for ID, it can, under the Constitution, decline to accept it. Also under the Confidence in Elections Act of 1877, there is also a modern American law that says it is illegal under American law for illegals to vote in a federal election. It does make an exception when there are other things on the ballot if you can determine whether or not there is a segregation of their non-federal vote opportunities from other opportunities to vote. But if you don't ask for ID, you can't make that determination. And since California has the biggest migrant population, it's illegal. Then what happens is you cast everything into a suspect situation. And I think on my reading and analysis of the law, the House of Representatives would be well within its authority to refuse to count the Electoral College votes from California, which would throw everything into a different loop. That's a hell of a lot of popular votes since it's the largest state in the union.
All right, so I want to go around and let people have their closing remarks because I want to start wrapping it up. It's late, and I know people have to go to work or just have stuff to do, and I'm tired.
Well, I'll go if I can go first, just to answer the judge's question. I'll just say this: I think that will not fly. Certainly, I think there's going to be a lawsuit that's going to be filed against the state of California in federal court if that came up, probably right before the elections, and they'll likely do that for the governor to say that, yeah, we use an ID to, I mean, for any basic thing, if you even wanted to buy a bottle of alcohol, if you appear to be under the age of 21, they flash you for ID. They flash you for ID for cigarettes, to buy cigarettes, to go and pick up, to go and use your ID, even to get a library card. They do that. So I just think that's utterly ridiculous and stupid. California, there's a reason why a lot of people are fleeing California right now. And that's in part because the elected officials don't clearly have an idea of what they're doing. And, inflation, everything is high up there. I was in California last year. The homeless population is out of control. I don't see what's so, you spend more money actually if you're from California going on vacation than living there. And I, certainly think this is also a reason why a lot of people are leaving the Democratic Party, because the state is run primarily by Democrats. We see in many of these Democratic cities that things are out of, I'm being honest, they're out of control. And that Governor Newsom, I've never had interest in him from the beginning, but this is the same Governor Newsom that a few weeks ago, he vetoed this black reparations bill, but then he wants to issue signs an apology for slavery, which just shows how backwards these are and how it's basically a backhanded slap towards black people that he would do that. But I'm going to end my comments with that. And I just want people to actually just do their fact checking. You're more impacted by things locally and from a state level. So pay attention to these, your district attorney's office and your governor's office and your mayor's office and your city council person, and start voting these people out. Don't give these people a license to stay in office for years and years. And if they're not doing anything, forget that they may be your family friends. They may look good in a sweater or whatever reason you think of outside of policy. Stop thinking policies. That's what's important. Thank you.
Well said.
I'm a vote by mail voter, so I'm not sure what the implications are with having to show your ID at a polling station. My closing remarks are basically just thank you guys for having us on the show, Judge, Dana. I had a great time. The VP watch party was great. And thank you to all the viewers that watch. Go subscribe to the new party and always vote.
By the way, one answer to you, the way the statute is worded is you don't have to provide ID to register to vote, not just show up and vote. You don't have to register showing ID either.
Okay.
Which is kind of strange, because how are you going to even show you're a California resident?
3 days.
Right.
Okay, so the next person, I guess D White dropped out again. Anyone else? Closing remarks?
I'll just say it like this. You know, this again, we have seen today what's at stake in this election. So what choice you gonna make? Communism or something a little bit different than communism? That's what's on the ballot.
Where's Nora?
I'm right here.
Oh, okay. Do you have any
I
closing
just want to
remarks?
say that today, it was a monumental day. We will remember this day in history. I think Iran bombing against Israel is going to go down in infamy because unfortunately, I think this might be the start to something bigger. So much is on stake for voting. Don't listen to what they tell you. Please, 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 please vote. This election is so important. I think this week, just living in the South, we were deeply, deeply impacted by the Hurricane Helene. It wasn't just Florida, it was Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. So God bless those that are impacted. I'm praying for you every day. I know people that lost everything.
Very,
And I
very.
think I think that's being forgotten and lost. We have a $3 billion deficit with FEMA, but we just handed over a check to Ukraine. This election is so important. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for the last 4 years. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for the military industrial complex, and we will go to war. We will continue to fund it with her. With Donald Trump, at least we will have some diplomacy and some negotiation. So that's my closing. Please check out at the new party. I did a show this week breaking down Kamala Harris's race. I gave credit to Judge Joe Brown and Dana for their speaking out against it. Judge Joe Brown is the first, in my opinion, the first person to really, really comment on her race. And it is important. And I'm going to tell you why it's important. The last thing I'm going to say, it's important because it shows her credibility. If you will lie about something as simple as your race, if you will lie about working at McDonald's, if you will lie that you went to China, who knows what else they're lying about. So please, please, please vote and please take that into consideration. And thank you so much, Dana, for this opportunity and Judge for sharing your knowledge.
Very quickly, Nora, I wanted to say to your point about being something bigger, wars and rumors of wars. Wars and rumors of wars.
I meant to put this live stream on a website and I totally forgot. I know I was forgetting something. I got to write stuff down. Listen, I just want to say thank you to everybody that sent in a donation. I appreciate you guys, everybody listening. I put the links to the new party and Gavin's YouTube channel. Dr. Julio, you're going to have to email me your social media handles.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So next time I'll know to put it, but I'll share it in my community this week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For everyone that needs to know where to find me, I'm on TikTok at Real Austin Off Script, on YouTube at Austin Off Script. And Judge, we've got to get you. We got to get you over to TikTok. There's a lot of people that would love to hear what you have to say over there.
All right. Give me a
So-
call. You know how to get me.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and thank you, Nora, for bringing up a lot of people who are really misplaced right about now. And are the checks being cut in Congress or the Biden administration or on your state level, especially, definitely state level and federal level, are the checks being cut to the hurricane victims, and the people that were displaced during the hurricane? I think that's not being talked about a lot for some reason. It's been very quiet.
Something I'd like to throw in here. Newsom issuing this bogus apology on behalf of the state of California for slavery. California became a state in 1851. That was 10 years before the Civil War started. Their constitution, adopted in 1851, absolutely forbade slavery. It also specifically designated part of the function for the University of California as establishing leadership in the various communities of the state, which included specifically what they designated the colored community. And the Constitution encouraged Black folk, colored as they called them then, going to the University of California to become leaders. So when you start talking about them apologizing for slavery, one would get the impression that California actually countenanced slavery, which it did not. So what is this empty apology on behalf of California that never allowed official segregation of any sort throughout the state from the time it became one?
Well, I heard that the state of California
Well, I
during
think in the gold rush they had that. They
they allowed slave masters to, when they were
Yeah.
going into California for the gold and everything else,
That
they
was-
allowed them to bring their slaves there and work for free.
That was 1848. It became a
So
state
that's what he was
in
apologizing for.
1851,
That's
3
what he-
years later, and the state constitution forbid.
It doesn't matter.
forbade-
That's what he's apologizing for. I'm not
No,
trying. I'm not trying to
it
give it an
wasn't even a
excuse. It's
state,
still
and-
pathetic.
No, I did a real long thing.
It was
a
empty.
dissertation on that when I was at UCLA.
But they did
And later
allow
on-
slave masters to bring their
Yeah,
to
but
bring
they
them
did
their
not.
slaves.
They would not allow the slave masters to enforce the maintenance of the slave connection. California was notorious for that. In other words, the slave masters quickly got out because there was no way they could catch their slaves. California made it unlawful
If the
for them
slaves
to
ran
attempt
away,
to force.
but
Yeah.
right, it doesn't. So again, it's still an empty apology. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
want
I
to go
mean,
back and forth
you're
about
talking
that. It's
about-
still an empty apology.
You're talking about 27 months when it was to an extent practiced, but way off the charts in terms of it being hidden because California wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, either way, he's apologizing
No,
for
he
it.
doesn't have anything to apologize.
It doesn't
to.
even matter. It's just
Look,
like
look,
right,
the
the whole
reason
thing,
it
the whole
matters-
thing is an empty apology.
The reason it matters is it was just a sham. It's just like a lot of stuff that the Democratic Party is doing. They're trying to put on a show when there's no reality to it. They're claiming to have done something when they did nothing. That apology is an empty one because 27 months out of, how long has it been? 150, 173 years since California became a state. And 27 months out of that, not out of that 173 years, but 27 months before it became a state in the Union, there were some slight incursions of slave masters that had no way of enforcing their slave owner status in that state, which was a territory then. So I find that disingenuous, it's fake, and it's another opportunity to pander to the Negro. That's
Yeah,
what I'm saying on it.
Yeah, and then too, y'all get on like, oh, this is what I have to. I meant to bring this up in the intro, and the reason why I forgot to bring it up because I did not. I meant to get screenshots of people in their comments. Y'all need to stop telling me, oh, we want to hear the judge. This is it. I don't give a fuck what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear. I wish, and that's my pet peeve now. Y'all created a pet peeve for me. The people in the chat, the listeners, y'all created a pet peeve trying to tell me, oh, let him talk. We want to hear it. I don't care. It's late. We're wrapping it up. So yes, I'm cutting him off, whether y'all like it or not. It's not a discussion. It's not a lecture right about now. It's just something he brought up, glazed on quickly. We can discuss it in further details on Thursday. Stop telling me what the fuck to do on my platform. That shit is annoying. It's so annoying. And it's like, and these are the people who never fucking donate, but they want to say, oh, we want to just sit and listen. No. And thank you. You created another goddamn. My other pet peeve is people who litter. People who litter. I would never date a guy if I see him litter. That's a big pet peeve of mine. But y'all people gave me another pet peeve. Oh, just let him talk. We're learning. I don't give a shit if you learning or not. I'm tired.
I'm no F-bomb on YouTube, remember?
Well, it's late. Yeah, it's late, and we're already 4 hours in, so it's okay. But So what I'm going to do for Wednesday and maybe a little bit on Thursday's show, I'm going to take the damn screenshots of people comment. I'm going to highlight some of y'all comments under these
Yes,
videos.
do it, Dana.
And
Call
put
them out.
y'all on blast. Yes, I meant to do it today, but I was just busy doing other stuff. But that's what I'm going to do. And it just reminded me when people's like, oh, I love you, Dana, but let him finish talking about no. No. Because like he said, he gave a goddamn dissertation on this whole thing. You think I'm gonna have him lecture us on that right now? Absolutely not. The fuck? Y'all be getting on my nerves. And you ain't buy no goddamn birthday present for me.
Right. October 7th. What's the whole month?
Yes. And which is gonna go down in fucking history the day Israel, started World War III, basically. But my birthday is going to trump that. And it's funny because the people that do send in donations, they don't ever talk shit. So if you buy me a present, if you send in a donation, you could tell me to, let him talk, whatever. And I probably won't. But still, you will get just a little bit more respect. Shit. All right, that was it. Thank you. And thank you to Mr. Eddie, honey, for coming on the beginning of the show.
Cake.
No, thank you, Eddie, for coming on in the beginning of the show, because I am going to clip that and I'm going to upload it. And I know I'm going to get some views, honey. And it's just for people to, and that's what I'm saying. Make sure y'all have him, the new party. Make sure you have Eddie come on your platform. Because that's
come on tomorrow, you guys. I wonder if he's going to show up. I'm going to message him and be like, hey, do you still want to come on? And this time it's going to be even worse because it's D White. It's another guy.
Yes. And it's Dana, are you and the judge related? Yes, we are. We're family. We're related. Yes. Yeah. People were like, he needs to start his own podcast. No, honey, he don't got the time to be pressing live on you. First of all, he's not even subscribed to YouTube. He ain't gonna do no goddamn X space. He don't got time to be talking to y'all like that and pressing buttons. He's busy, booked and busy. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Eddie. So everybody could see how nasty and sassy our Democrats are. But yeah, subscribe to Gavin. I don't know what happened to the judge. And subscribe to the new party. The links will be in the description. Oh, you dropped down. The links will be in the description. And yeah, check it out and subscribe. And that's it, everybody. And thank you to my moderators. Love the moderators.
Thank you, Dana, and happy birthday.
Happy
birthday, Dana.
Good night, guys.
And Jared, he does donate. He was like, Dana with the misinformation, honey. Tell me my misinformation.
I'm getting balloons coming up on my thing.
No, honey, I am not single. I got a boo.
Good.
Bay from the Bay. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Dana. Bye.
Bye. All right. No, I didn't cut the judge off. He left. Shit, he tired. Y'all be killing me. Let him talk. We want to hear. No, it's midnight. No, I'm tired. 3-4 hours. No. Bay from the Bay. That's what I got. Since you're so concerned. I will see you guys tomorrow with Dana and the Dana with the Data podcast. Yes. And again, thank you guys. This was a good debate. It was a great watch party. Thank you to everybody that came up on the panel tonight. Of course, always the judge, the new party, Dr. Julio, Gavin. Yeah. So, and I'm going to put everyone's social media handles in the description so you guys could go and follow them. And I'm going to have them come back on, not just for watch parties, but, we're doing a show together and everything. So thank you to them, the moderators, everybody in the love room, everybody. First of all, the ones who donated, I love you most of all. And tomorrow I am going to highlight every person that bought me a birthday present, and their names is going to go in the giveaways that I'm going to be doing in November and December. So the link to my birthday registry is in the description as well, and it's in the community section. So yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. I love you, even though you gave me a pet peeve. Love you anyway. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye.